The Unholy Trinity Podcast. 3 Blues, 3 Opinions, 1 Everton Podcast.
Welcome to episode 149 of the Unholy Trinity Podcast, brought to you in association with Sports Social, the UK's only dedicated sports podcast network, and also Fanatics. It's the night after the very late Sunday night before, as we record today, where Everton's 7-game unbeaten run came to an end at Goodison Park to pretty in form and pretty half decent Manchester United side, which we're going to get into very, very shortly. But like to say, being joined today by a couple of guests on the show. First of all, from Sport Witness, Sean Lunt. Sean, I've never spoken for a while on the show. How are you going, mate? You good?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
Oh, very good, mate. Yeah. Besides, obviously, what happened last night, but no, all good, mate. So looking forward to discussing that and much more. And also, Max Carlyle. Max obviously been on the show a few times in the past as well. How are you, Max? Did you enjoy the game last night?
Yes, I did go to the game last night. I enjoyed the little fanfare aspect of it beforehand because every time Everton fans have arranged that previously, I've been working the game, so never actually been able to take part in it. So that was an enjoyable experience. But aside from the result, mate, yes, all good. Thanks for having me on the show again. And Sean, it's nice to speak to you, mate, because I believe we haven't spoke before, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, one of them know each other by face and name, but not meeting personally. So
that's it. It's all about making connections, isn't it? On this show, you see names and you see faces sometimes on social media, but it's always good to discuss the Blues with obviously with different people. So I mean, straight into it, really. As I said, the 7-game unbeaten run has ended. It was a funny game for me, wasn't it? Really, if you think back, Sean, obviously Everton started the game, the house on fire. Within the first 5 minutes or so, Alex Iwobi puts the ball into the top corner, and we started with a real intensity. Obviously, the tackle from Onana led to the goal in the middle of midfield, and you think we're looking, we're going to continue this unbeaten run. But from that moment, really, we sat off, didn't we? And things unravelled a little bit, didn't they, from after that first goal?
Yeah, it was. I think Everton caught themselves off guard. I don't think Everton had planned to start the game as they did. I don't think they thought they'd get a goal that early, kick off, and then he didn't know what to do with it once they'd done it. There was no game plan in place for, we've got an early goal, let's go and get another one and maybe a third one and kill the game off early. Because I don't think Everton are very good at that anyway. And by sitting off, we sort of let United control the tempo, control the pace, get themselves back, be set. And you saw it in the analysis last night on Match of the Day. You were talking about Casemiro. He made the mistake for the first goal for Everton's goal and then completely dominated the midfield for the rest of the game, set on it and set the pace. And I think that was the problem. Everton never built on that early initiative that they got themselves.
I think you're right, to be honest with you. And I think almost, like you say, that goal, being so early, it was almost a bit of a curse in a way. We always say about scoring at the right time as well as trying to get the first goal. And I just think I always think back to, we were saying last night, me and obviously the lads, and Lee was there, obviously, of course, and think back to that FA Cup final against Chelsea when Zaha scored so early, and you think do it in the 90th, not the first, But last night was one of those occasions, and we almost didn't we, Max? It was almost as if we weren't too sure then. We've gone ahead early. What do we do to defend that without being, sort of sitting too deep? And we got lost of it, didn't we?
Yes, we did. It was ultimately it was a frustrating night. From an Everton perspective, it always is disappointing when you go a goal in front and ultimately end up losing that game. But however, I do think it's got to be said from an objective standpoint, when you look at the balance of play and in particular the quality of the chances that were made, I've got to say I do think United probably edged and deserved the win. They've got players with the technical ability. I'm talking the likes of your Eriksen, your Bruno Fernandez's, and Anthony Martial even, to find space in between the lines, and they've got that decisive ball when it matters at important times, which I do possibly think Everton, this current group of players, lack. which is something that they could certainly work on. And then, of course, they've got the likes of Ronaldo, Anthony, and even Rashford as well, who excel in those 1v1 situations, duels, and the ability to finish when called upon, which ultimately were decisive in determining the outcome of the game.
I definitely agree on that point, Max. About I said to you, Mike, after the game, didn't I? I thought Eriksen was the best player on the pitch. And when he played against us, obviously for Brentford, I know obviously we were down to 10 men in that game. He was outstanding in that game as well. Yeah, he obviously had a lot more time then because he was obviously playing against 10. But him and Casemiro, like Sean alluded to before, just basically, you could tell they were two seasoned pros playing at the highest level. They pretty much controlled the pace of the game, especially first half. I know, look, we were at fault. Mike, I know you're going to talk about the goals. We were obviously victims of our own downfall for both goals, really. Sloppy errors. But, sometimes you've got to take your hat off to the opposition. You've got to say that, United, goal down, let's have it right as well. The atmosphere was bouncing after Iwobi scored a cracking goal there. What a moment for the lad, by the way. For a good 3 or 4 minutes, the whole stadium was on its feet shouting Iwobi. I mean, what a great moment for him. I love that. But then we seemed to just play at the pace that the crowd was setting then. We sort of played at 100 mile an hour for about 5 or 6 minutes. And you could see Cody and Onana almost going, calm down. Can't get your foot on it. We're getting carried away. We're playing at the speed that the crowd's dictating. So, But then after that, United just got on the ball. I'd love to have known the tactics beforehand, but looking into it, we did score early. And then I think the tactics all along were just to let them come on to us and try and counter with pace with Gordon and Gray. But obviously, we just couldn't get out of our own half, could we? I mean, they penned us in. We were basically launching it up to Mopé, who had no chance against two centre-halves with his stature. As I said, sometimes you've just got to give credit to the opposition. I thought United, first half especially, probably the best they've played this season in the matches I've seen them play. They could have scored. Let's be honest, Casemiro misses a sitter. They could have scored maybe 3 or 4, and that's against a team who going into the game was the best defence in the league and had only conceded 2 goals in one game once before that. You know what I mean? So they scored 2 in one half.
I think we said, though, didn't we, about obviously stats can always be deceiving, and we conceded, obviously, the least prior to last night's game. Obviously, you have to look at the underlying stats as well, and Everton were conceding good opportunities, and obviously at times it was a lot of the time it's last-ditch blocks, it's Jordan Pickford being on form, which has stopped us conceding goals, and that's something which we need to sort of address as a side as well. Yes, conceding goals, we haven't conceded a great deal, but there are underlying things which still, as much as we've looked to address our defensive issues, there's still things obviously for them to work on. But I think when we scored the goal and we talk about obviously players we're trying to get everyone else to sort of just calm themselves down, I think almost the players, you said last night, Lee, didn't you, on the way home, about they fed off the energy of the crowd almost too much. So because obviously it was fever pitch, obviously everyone's in love with Alex Iwobi, aren't they, of course? So if anyone could score last night and score that kind of goal, you want it to be him, because his play this season has certainly deserved a goal of that stature. And I think because it was like that, because the fans were so up, the players then didn't really control their emotions, and that's where mistakes, I thought, that's why mistakes were creeping in my opinion. I mean, you look at both goals, Sean, and it's unlike both. Idrissa Gana Gueye, I think it was his first mistake leading to a goal. Going back, I mean, since he was last at Everton, going back many, many years, but including his time at PSG as well. So it shows you, doesn't it, how even our better players can have off days. But both him and Iwobi, both guilty of, giving the ball away in a central area, which put us under real pressure.
Yeah, it's going back to that point of they fed on the crowd too much, is they were all trying to do everything a little bit too quickly. And they get high. I think part of it is an inexperience, not with Carnegie, but the rest of the young players and people like that. They try and they pick up on it, and then they want to do everything 100 mile an hour, and that's not Everton's game. They're not good enough to do that at the minute. And if you're doing that and you're pushing yourself up the pitch, you're leaving yourself open to those counter attacks that Man United want to play. That's why they've got the likes of Anthony in there to do that. And those mistakes come from that desperate need to give the crowd what they're wanting. And I don't know if I sort of apportion some of the blame to Lampard as well, because I don't think he's a good enough manager as yet to bring his side back and be tactical enough to do what he wants them to do and not just play on the emotions. And it feeds back into last season, and playing on the emotions worked really well for Everton, but it can't work every single week. Some weeks you have got to be better tactically to avoid mistakes like that from those players. And I mean, there's Mikalenko dribbled out the box, the goal that got disallowed in the end. He's dribbling out of there for no reason. Iwobi giving the ball away. He's overconfident because he scored, so he's over dribbling, he's doing things that he doesn't need to do. And I think it all just did tie into that. Everton doing things that they shouldn't be doing because they were overhyped, overexcited is probably the word. Like a dog chasing a car. They got it and they chased it, and now what do we do? We're just going to keep doing that again. We're going to keep running and running, and it doesn't work. Sometimes you need to step back. And I think that was where United's players came into it. Because I said about Casemiro, he calmed Everton down for them. Whereas their defensive midfielder, who's obviously 70 million, one of the best midfielders to have played the game in that position, he calmed United down and they had their tactical, and Everton didn't have that. They had Garnagay making mistakes, and it all spiralled from there, really.
Yeah, that game was always, last night's game, and I think Lampard semi-alluded to it himself, it was always going to be a litmus test for us. A side that's 7 games unbeaten, in a little bit of form. Okay, a lot of those games are draws, but we've looked a lot more solid. But we're playing against a United team who've had a good start to the season. Ten Hag's got his hands on that team. You know what I mean? That's certainly the best United team I've seen at Goodison for a good few years, by the way, in terms of how well they were set up, the quality of player on the pitch. So it was always going to be like, where are we now? And whilst we've had a reasonable start to the season, and we've definitely looked a lot more solid, you can see that United is still obviously on that other level. They're on that other level in terms of calibre of player. We know that anyway. The money they spend every window is ridiculous. They've got 100 million pound winger, 70 million pound defensive midfielder. Jadon Sancho's 85 million, not even in the team. You know what I mean? So they spend stupid amount of money. So, but it was always going to be that test for us, and to see where we're at, and we pretty much found out where we're at the end of the game, didn't we?
Let's not forget as well, this is Man United who were desperate to bounce back after getting battered by their fiercest rivals last week. Mm-hmm. So the motivation was there for them anyway. I don't think any of us are going to argue that Erik ten Hag's a better manager than Frank Lampard. He's got more tactical experience. He's a better tactical manager at this point in their 2 careers than it is anyway. That factors into it. More experienced players. And this is also an Everton side that's still gelling together. I mean, you've got James Coleman comes in who shouldn't be playing anyway, but he's got to because our right back's being injured. These are 2 centre-backs of a brand new partnership. A left-back who's only been in the country since January. The midfield is a brand new midfield from last season. The forwards is a brand new forwards. One of the wingers, Anthony Gordon's come back in from being injured. He wasn't at it at all. And you've got Damari Gray on the left, who's one good game in 5 sort of player. So it's a team that's still gelling, whereas Man United had that experience to get over that sort of thing. And then you bring Ronaldo off the bench and he scores anyway. Like, whoever Everton are bringing a half-fit Dominic Calvert-Lewin off the bench. There's reasons why Everton lose that game, and it's not all Everton's fault.
Yeah, of course, and that's what we need to obviously look at, and we are going to discuss obviously in a bit more detail after the break about that side of things, and the reality of the situation, and the fact that just because we turn this mini corner, it doesn't mean that we can expect to go into each and every game at Goodison Park, especially, and expect the players to perform to a particular level and win against quality sides. It doesn't happen, and like we've said, we've got to give credit to the opposition. But like you said, Sean, and they've spent silly money on a lot of players. They're bringing Ronaldo off the bench. When Martial gets injured, you've got Anthony sitting there who's bought for 100 million quid. Casemiro, we said before, has won multiple Champions Leagues. It's just an absolute farce in terms of what we're trying to compete against. So obviously a lot of factors as to why we didn't win the game. But I think probably the disappointing thing really from probably our viewpoint was after that first 5 minutes, the game took a particular pattern, and it stayed that way until pretty much near the 85th minute or so. Obviously, great news and great to see Dominic Calvert-Lewin back. Max obviously back on the pitch, first time this season. Every single time he was out warming up, you could see, I know the fans around me were getting edgy and calling for Lampard to get him on. he knows he's got to wrap him in cotton wool. He knows how many minutes he's probably got on his legs. He's got to be careful. But it was great, Max, wasn't it? To get him on because, Neil Maupay, let's get it right. He's been great for us. And especially that first game against Liverpool where he hadn't played any football. He comes in and plays a full 90 minutes. But the ball wasn't sticking. And if we're going to try and change the course of the game, we had to do something different. So to get Dominic Calvert-Lewin back on, doing what he does well, he was hanging in the air, he was bringing players in, he was a bit of a nuisance in the box, and maybe should have scored, to be honest with you, late on. It was good to see him back, wasn't it? And hopefully now, fingers crossed, that's the end of this injury nightmare for him for the time being.
Yeah, you'd certainly like to hope so. And just to almost add on add to the conversation in regards to Lampard's tactical choices, I did find it quite interesting that he put him up with Maupay as a two almost. It'd be interesting to see how that develops over time, and of course that is dependent on Dominic Calvert-Lewin's fitness. But I agree to an extent with portioning some of the blame to Lampard. Obviously, he knows just how many minutes Dominic Calvert-Lewin is capable of at this moment in time. But like many of the fans, I was pressing for that change to be made earlier, to have that focal point at the top of the pitch if we are launching the ball up front, and almost to create that better calibre of chance which we were lacking against Manchester United. In comparison, where Manchester United often, fashioned 1v1s or real clear-cut chances, Everton were almost hooking the ball into the box and nobody would be on the end of it. Just in reflection to the game, I saw a quote from Lampard explaining how the turnover of possession will be costly against a team like United, which, for all their flaws, I think particularly defensively, like we've said, a couple of times already, the calibre of player they've got going forward is world class. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. So for the mistakes to be made from, a usually dependent player in Idrissa Gana Gueye and Alex Iwobi, who's been in a good vein of form, it is just really misfortunate. And I think as a whole, in particular the midfield, will be disappointed in that they didn't perform to the level that they know that they're capable of. But at the same time, I know Sean mentioned earlier, this is a Manchester United team coming off the back of that heavy defeat to Manchester City. We saw that they beat Liverpool following their big defeat, the 4-0 defeat against Brentford. So I did have in the back of my mind, this is possibly the worst time for Everton to be playing Manchester United. But all things considered, it's not a result that I'm going to lose any sleep over. I think it's one of those instances where, we go back, we analyse, we reflect, and we learn from the defeat and go again next time out.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, mate. I totally agree with that. I think, there's reasons to be positive about our football club right now. It wasn't that long ago. There was massive toxicity between fans and players, massive toxicity between fans and manager. Lampard's come in. It was an absolute, show. We know that. He's managed to steady the team. He's managed to, keep us up by the skin of our teeth. And now, he's now going to try and obviously build his own side. On the whole, the window was a strong window. On the whole, yes, we need more goals on the side. I think we all know that. But, we can't address everything in one window. It's almost impossible. So as far as windows go, we've managed to shift a lot of players that we would agree should have been going out of the club. And we've brought in some, a mixture of talent, of young talent, and obviously experienced players in the likes of Gay and Cody and Tarkowski and people like that. So overall, it's a solid window. We look a lot more solid as a club. Lampard, as you alluded to there, Sean, he's a young manager. He's learning his way in the game. He's not the finished article by any means. What we know of Lampard as a player is that he made himself the best possible player he can be. Lampard, in terms of natural talent, was not on the same level as a Scholes or a Gerrard, but he made himself that level by pure hard work and determination and being probably the most professional player he could possibly be. I think Lampard as a manager, and from what I've heard as well, is that type of guy. He will literally work his absolute arse off to make himself the best manager he can be as well. And look, hopefully it'll work at our club. The signs of fruition there in terms of what he's trying to do, but he will learn as he goes along as well. You know what I mean? As we said, he's not the finished article. But there's plenty of shoots there for me to see that actually we're going in the right direction. And like you, Max, I'm not going to lose sleep over this one. It was a test to see where we're at. United played well as well, and let's not take that away. Second half, we gave it more of a go. Second half, we had 10 shots to their 4 second half. So we were much better second half without being brilliant, but we were much better. And I thought Lampard's comments after the game were absolutely bob on when he actually said that himself. He said, look, there's still things I knew that were wrong going into this game, even though we were unbeaten, that I know we need to improve, namely how we press as a collective, and also how good are we in possession of the ball. And we showed both of those things yesterday, both of those frailties. We weren't great in possession of the ball, and we were forced to go long to a guy that's probably no bigger than 5'9". You know what I mean? So if Dom was fully fit, and he would have started, I think we probably would have caused him a lot more problems because he would have occupied 2 centre halves a lot better than Mopé would have done. But he wasn't. We are where we are, and he did make a difference when he came on.
Just to add to that, and I think Max was saying about this with Calvert-Lewin coming on so late as well. One of my big problems with Lampard at the minute is he doesn't seem to adapt to games. So he will let games run and his substitutions can be very late or disorganised sort of. There's no sort of plan B. Now, I don't mean this to sound like I'm criticising him in any way, but if that was one big development I would want from him, it would be that. And I think that it was shown again last night in that Everton didn't make their changes quickly enough when it was obvious that Manchester United were controlling the game. They didn't have anything to change it. It was just, let's just lump it up. Let's put Calvert-Lewin up there with Mopé and see what happens. And there needs to be more of that from him for me. I love Lampard and I agree with everything that he has said there. I think Everton's perfectly fine with Everton, but that would be my one big criticism, is I think he doesn't do enough to affect games when we're not in control of them. But that might just be because of what he's got available to him in truth.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's fair.
None of us would know. None of us would know how fit Dom was. I mean, I was like you, mate. I was calling for Dom even to come on at half time, to be honest, because we could all see that we were struggling to get out. We were struggling to make the ball stick. But he clearly probably only had 15 minutes in his legs. It's a really weird one with Dom. I was talking with Baz from Toffee TV. He sits in the same area in the Upper Bullens. And, the problem is with Dom is that he's had that many injuries now. He's had that many setbacks when he's come back from injuries. It then becomes mental. And when it becomes mental, you're in a situation almost like Sturridge was at Liverpool, where you feel like you're going to pull it with an injury. He needs to play now about 15, 20 consecutive games with no injuries to almost convince himself he's not going to pull up with an injury, because then it does become it is like a mental test for him more than a physical one, really. Now, hopefully he stays fit, because we all know Dom, when he's fully fit and he's shown it, the guy can score goals. You know what I mean? So, and we have got players in the team who have got capabilities of finding Dom. We've just got to make sure that hopefully, he can get a run of, as I said, 15, 20 games without getting injured.
I think that's the key thing, isn't it, with Dom? Is the mental side of it now. It's trusting his body to be a professional footballer's body once again. He's had so much bad luck. With the injuries that he's had this season had nothing to do with what he had last season. You'd think, he's broken down again. It's the same thing, and it's not. And he's got to almost reset his mind and get himself in a good place mentally to be able to then kick on. And obviously, hopefully, be able to play 15, 20 consecutive games. I think if we can get through the games now until the World Cup break unscathed, building up as he goes, obviously 15, 20 minutes or so last night, can he give us half an hour against Spurs, etc. It just build himself up nicely like that, and he comes through okay. Then hopefully that will be enough for him to have that little break, 5-6 weeks, and then obviously go again into the second half of the season.
Just quickly. Well, I wanted to get your guys' opinion as well. Obviously, at the game, obviously we made 2 stupid mistakes that led to one-on-ones that led to goals. But I felt Pickford, certainly for the Anthony one. Anthony scored a very similar goal against Arsenal. He telegraphed it. He opened his body up. He's all 1 foot. We know that. He's only all day going to bend that in the far corner. I know he got a hand to it, and I know he nearly saved it, but the point is he still scored. Then I looked at the Ronaldo one, and I've seen the replay since. It was obviously a very tight angle, and he's almost hit it through Pickford in a way. I mean, it's gone near post, obviously, but the ball almost ended up in the middle of the net. Now, Ronaldo's a top finisher. We know that. He's world class. He's shown that. But it'd be interesting to get. I mean, look, I am not knocking Jordan whatsoever. He's been absolute class for us. Ever since Ancelotti got onto him about working on his game mentally, especially. And he's been brilliant for us. You know what I mean? He really has. And he was put in those situations by obviously our mistakes. But I just felt he probably could have done a little bit better with both. Mike, you're obviously a resident keeper here, but I mean, do you agree with that or disagree?
It was funny because we spoke about it, didn't we, last night? And where I sit in the paddock, I'm row 8 in the corner by the side of the street. So from my angle, I couldn't really make out, obviously, exactly where Pickford was there. You just think, Anthony's opened his body up, he's bent it in the far corner. Like Lee said, it's what you would do in that position. He cuts inside, obviously on the right-hand side onto his left foot. Now, for me, players at that level, if they see you sort of force in one way, then they can quite easily whip it into the near side if they want to, because they're that good a player. And Anthony's one of those players. So I think the issue is because it was a thread, wasn't it, which has since come to light. But to be fair, you did say it was on the way on last night about this situation with Pickford. But a thread from John Harrison on Twitter, who does a bit of work for The Athletic, you might have seen it today. And I thought it was really, really informative. And basically, it's almost as if he's got an algorithm, if you like, which determines basically goalkeepers' positions and how they affect the percentage of chance of the attacker scoring a goal by what position that they're in. And the swing from what Pickford, if he would have gone basically in a different position than what he was in, it was amazing how much it makes a big difference. So I think what I would say is, as a goalkeeper, he was exposed more than twice, but he was exposed twice for those 2 goals. And you've got to make a split-second decision about what you're going to do. He was left wide open, and he's thinking, what's the best way to deal with it? And he thinks he's got his position right. And obviously, any slight, centimetre difference, a few centimetres here and there, can make all the difference. So it's not about apportioning blame, but I get your point. I see your point in terms of, if you look at the replay and you look at where Pickford finds himself, you think, what are you doing there? It's probably more for me the Ronaldo goal, to be honest with you, more than the other one. I think the Ronaldo one, I think he'd be disappointed with. I know Ronaldo's absolutely smashed it at him with his left foot, but it's gone quite sensible. And, he doesn't get anything on it. And I think maybe he's right on the edge of his 6-yard box, isn't he? On the corner of his 6-yard box. And it makes it that bit easier and gives Ronaldo more goal to actually aim at. So it's a funny one, isn't it? But that really interests me, that seeing how slight adjustments can make such a big difference to an attacker's chance of scoring a goal. And if you've not seen the thread, I'd please, have a little look at it, because it is interesting. It's not often that you see goalkeepers probably analysed in such detail, especially for us, obviously, us common folk here. But if you have a little look at it at JD Harrison 1 on Twitter and follow that thread along. But it's Jordan Pickford's been very, very good for 18 months. All goalkeepers, all players, make miscalculations, by split seconds and by centimetres, and it can have this kind of impact. But like we said, they created so many chances anyway, especially first half. We were lucky to go in only 2-1 down and could have found ourselves further behind on another day. So not a portion of blame to Jordan Pickford, that's for sure. But really interesting thread to have a little read of. But it's a game that I say we're keen to put that one to bed. It's a reflection of where we are as a side, and we've touched on it already. Lee mentioned a few things there about obviously the squad and the window and how we have sort of come on. But obviously it was very much back to reality last night after 7 games unbeaten, and we're going to discuss that and obviously reflect on things with a bit more balance after our first break.
The Unholy Trinity Podcast. 3 Blues, 3 opinions, 1 Everton podcast.